Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips.
Hello, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello, everybody.
And Unlocking Your Truth is being broadcast on CIVL on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. Welcome, listeners. And if you're new to the show, let me explain that Unlocking Your Truth is all about metaphysics and spirituality. And every week we explore a different topic under that umbrella. And sometimes we even have fantastic guests that we like to introduce you to who bring a different perspective.
Like tonight.
Like tonight. Tonight we've got a different perspective, a perspective that we've never had on the show before. So we're very excited to be introducing and welcoming our guest. Our guest is Eyal from Intimate Power. And he is a Tantric life coach. He's an author and a speaker. And he's a recognized authority on sexuality and also the female orgasm. He helps holistic fempreneurs to unleash their full potential in love, life, and business. And he has a best-selling book, which is called Orgasm Unleashed, Your Guide to Pleasure, Healing, and Power. And his book has been endorsed by leading female sex educators. And he's also appeared on ABC Australia and the Melissa Ambrosia Show, Huffington Post, Bustle, and many other esteemed media outlets. And he's going to inspire us this evening by helping us to harness our sexuality and unleash our full potential in love, life, and business. But also, we hope to surf around the interface between spirituality and sexuality. Because, of course, that's what our show is all about. So welcome, Eyal.
Hello, Leslie. Good evening, and good evening, Corey, and thank you for having me here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And because, as I said, our show is predominantly about spirituality, I'd like to get your perspective on how sexuality and spirituality interconnect and interrelate. So maybe we could start with that.
Yes. So this is something that these are two worlds or two concepts that has been traditionally in religion and in society, they've been really separated. Okay. So specifically in the Judeo-Christian religions, it's like sex is a sin, in Christianity. And, some, you can look at even the Eden stories, as part of this. And there's always been a lot of guilt and shame and repression around sexuality in the Christian religion. I'm not against the Christian religion by itself. I'm against the people who made those wrongful distinctions. And also, in other religions and stuff, sexuality has always been controlled and repressed. And by the way, it still is.
Yes.
So for most people, like being spiritual meant not being sexual, and kind of like the height of being spiritual is being a monk or a nun, and that usually includes a vow of celibacy. And sexuality is something which is considered more, for the commoners, more for the lay people. If you're a monk or a nun, you're not doing all of this. And one of the things that the science and the art of Tantra from India brings is the recognition that it's not just about sex, by the way. It's the recognition that this world is not just a passageway to the next world. It's not just an illusion. It's not just, something to endure until we get the afterlife. But this is actually the spiritual practice itself is in this world, in this manifestation. And it's through the body and through the senses, and one might say also through sex, that you can go beyond the body and beyond the senses into not just into Godhead, but into the union between, you know, the beyond and here, the union between eternity and this moment. So one of the things I really like about generally about Tantra, not just about sexual Tantra, is that Tantra celebrates life, celebrates being human, celebrates matter and not just spirit. You know, because in a lot of spiritual tradition, there's kind of like the idea of the beyond. Okay,
Right.
the idea that we're trying to get somewhere else, trying to get, you know, just into spirit. And I'm thinking like, let's get spirit into here instead of trying to run away from here into spirit.
Yeah,
So
I absolutely agree with you. You know, that so much of spirituality has ignored the physical body, and yet we are spirit and we have a physical body. And, you know, you can only look at what's happened in some of the religions as we look around. When sexuality has been repressed, it ends up in abusive situations. And so when it's misdirected and dampened down, as you say. So
yeah.
I want to ask you more about Tantra and learn more from you about it. And because, and I'd like to, I mean, I teach Kundalini meditation myself. And I know that celibacy is a choice, isn't it? You can choose to be sexually active and you can choose to be celibate. But if you choose to be celibate, then energetically speaking, there are practices to channel your energy so that it isn't misdirected. And so I'm interested in learning from you some of your wisdom about the channeling of those energies in appropriate manners, whether you're making the choice to be sexually active or whether it's you're making the choice not to be.
Yes. I want to say a disclaimer that, you know, we're talking about Tantra. I am a Tantric practitioner. I don't, you know, see myself as a Tantric master or a guru or enlightened or any of those things, just to be really clear. So celibacy, there's actually a few ways to practice celibacy. And the traditional way with celibacy is not having sex. Okay, not having relationship, not having sex, or just having platonic relationship. And, you know, some, you know, practitioners wouldn't even have touch. Some practitioners wouldn't even have sight of the opposite sex. Okay.
Right.
And that is one way to do that. And again, it's like, I'm not saying that's bad. I've definitely had times of celibacy, and I've heard from other people who have longer periods of celibacy that that's actually a really beautiful practice. And there's also another kind of experience, which is being sexual but not losing your sexual energies. Okay, because what most people and most religion know is that when we have sex, the man ejaculates. The woman, if she has an orgasm, most women have the kind of orgasm that actually depletes them, depletes their energy, robs them of their personal, energetic, creative, and spiritual potential. Okay, so one of the things that Tantra, and specifically Tantric sexuality, teaches is how to be aware of these energies and how to conserve, how to circulate, how to channel these energies so you're not losing them. You know, because somebody can be celibate and they can be losing their energies in other ways, not in
Right.
sex. Okay. And this is what I say. It's generally looking at life as an energetic experience and not just looking at life as a physical experience. So there's many practices, and I've definitely, you know, done a lot of them. And the first practice that I would bring awareness to is awareness itself.
Mm.
Because I have done, and I've seen many people around me do practices, but it was about doing the practices rather than being aware of the underlying energy and the underlying intention behind those practices. So, and this is also something that you see in the Tantra world, in the yoga world, you know, people get very attached to how, you know, flexible they are and how long they can hold, you know, an asana or pranayama or whatever. while being awful people in the same time. So for me, it's first of all bringing awareness to awareness itself, and really to every moment and every action and every word, and bringing awareness into the sexual act is literally a spiritual practice. So this is the first thing that I would say, and very much related to that is relaxing into things, not trying to strive into states or practices or whatever. So again, I have done this mistake. I have tried to get somewhere rather than relaxing and saying, oh, how am I already having this experience right now? And how can I just relax more and more into it instead of pushing towards it? Okay, and then the next practices, this is, it's really important to say. And then the next practices, yes, there's energy exercises, controlling ejaculation, controlling sexual energy. For men, for women, it's like channeling sexual energy between both partners. There's a lot there, but it all comes from awareness, and it comes from relaxation.
And I can see, and actually I can feel the energy of, as you talk about it, and I think you mentioned the word mindfulness, because focusing on the body, whether you're focusing on the breath or whether you're focusing on a sexual practice, it's bringing your attention to the body. And you are not your body, you are spirit. And when you bring your attention to the body, you bring yourself into present time, right here, right now, where the body is and where you're living your life. And is very grounded. And so, because a lot of spiritual practices are not grounded, and they're outside of the body. And yet, why did you create a body if you didn't want to experience the body?
Exactly. There's Tibetan practices where you visualize these, deities, and you visualize the whatever 1008 petals, and there's a lot of visualization going on. But for me, I've done, the visualizations, and I've done, trying to focus on the chakra, and I've done all of this. And for me right now, one of the most profound practices is sitting and feeling my ass, feeling my sitting bones on the floor, on the mattress, on the chair. Okay. This is more grounding for me than meditating on, Muladhara chakra, or an idea of Muladhara, the root chakra. Okay, because that's an idea. And yes, there is, an energetic structure called, the root chakra, but it's so much easier for me to feel my sitting bone rather than focus on an idea.
Yes.
But even as a male, if you look at a lot of the men in society, they're never present, and even in their stances, and they're not presenting a masculine energy. And I find with our society, with women working so much because they have to work in order to make ends meet these days, because of the cost of living and everything. So of course they're going out into a masculine world. The man's going out to a masculine world. They're both bringing home masculine energies, and the woman can slowly slip back into a wonderful feminine nature. But a man, when he slips out of his masculinity, that interaction, that essence of male sexual attraction changes. And I find that is I think a lot of men, especially when they're dating and things like that, don't know how to be there present as a man.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to relate to what? Sorry, are you finished? I just want to.
I'm done. Yeah.
So there's two things that for me, I'm hearing in what you're saying. So one of them is that, the world has become, masculinized, and women have become masculinized. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that actually masculine and feminine are not, are just two concepts. And there's actually immature masculine feminine and mature masculine feminine. And when we say that, women are in the masculine, we mean that they're in their immature masculine. Okay, and the same thing with men. So in societies, there's confusion and disinformation about what it is to be a man or to be a woman. So the man is, we get images from media about men who are machos, men who are physically strong, boys don't cry, all of this stuff. But actually, the mature masculine have integrated the feminine inside, and the
Definitely.
mature feminine in that. And same thing with a woman. A woman can be, successful, and she can keep directing and leading and everything, but she does it as a woman. And she's not trying to be a man. And I know this because I have the, business women and entrepreneurs coming to me, and they say, it's like, I'm successful, I'm rich, I have, authority, I have influence, I have everything, but I'm feeling dry. And I'm feeling masculine, and I can't relax, and I constantly in control.
Yeah. It's like an onion. People are like onions. You peel off one layer of masculinity, peel off another layer of that. Then there's a layer of femininity, and then maybe masculinity, and it just keep going and going and going until you get to that core. And it would be so nice if we would be able to do the onion in reverse and have our core exposed. And when we go into different areas, just like we can play with them at the same time. It's I like yourself, I admit that I've had issues with my masculinity. I've had issues. I've done things that as a man now, as a mature individual, I look back on and I go, was I ever foolish as a child, even in my mid years?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a constant, for me, the most amazing journey is the journey back into myself. So yes, I'm doing this walk in the world and stuff. But for me, it's like, how can I relax more and more into who I really am, who I really am as a person, as my personality is, and who I am beyond the personal. Okay, so resting as the self, resting as spirit, resting as the one which is the one which is everything. And that's both, and that's what I'm saying. I used to be all about, getting into the enlightenment and getting into beyond. And for me now, it's about, I like really nice clothes. I like really nice food. I like, really nice places. I like to do certain things, and it's actually relaxing into my own manifestation here in this world. And in the same time, relaxing into knowing that it's way beyond me, personality, ego, name, and so on.
Yeah. And that to me, that's a perfect relationship, when two people can be together, whether they're male, female, male, friends, intimate friends, intimate partners, when both partners allow the other partner to be exactly who they are and draw that out of them. And the more that you can, that a person can be who they are, truly who they are, the better the relationship. And I don't care what type of relationship it is. It's a better relationship.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
So then let me ask another question. Because I teach a lot about spirit, but I teach people how to be consciously awake and aware within the physical body. And so one of the things I'm interested in your perspective on this. So one of the things I always teach about is, it's like, you are spirit, you're not your body, but the body has a consciousness of its own. And the body has certain intrinsic drives within it. It has its emotions, it has its intellect, and it has its sexuality. And from my perspective, those three things are all part of the physical body, and they're not who you are as spirit. And so part of being able to live a conscious life is to be able to take charge of those body aspects. Are so strong and powerful, it can be like a wild stallion. And part of the job of becoming a conscious, awakened and aware human is to take the reins of that stallion and be the one that's steering the stallion. Yeah. So you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth, listeners, with Dr. Leslie and Corey, and our guest today, Eyal. And after the break, he's going to answer my question about taming the wild stallion. Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey. And before the break, we were talking with Eyal. We're talking about sacred sexuality. And I was asking for his perspective on body versus spirit again, and specifically with respect to the fact that the body has its own innate drives. It has its sex drive, it has its emotions, and it has its very powerful intellect. And most humans are really being driven by that body consciousness. But to become an awakened human is about learning to tame and steer the wild stallion. So I'm wondering what your perspective on that is, Eyal.
That's true. That, we call it a lion or a stallion, or, sexuality and sexual energy and sexual desires are very strong.
Mm.
And they're usually tied to our interaction with our parents, actually, the same way that our interaction, relationship are based on our interaction with our parents and the parent from the opposite sex. Sexuality is very similar to that. Okay, so this goes to really, really primordial, really, really core issues or core programming of the person. So that's one thing to acknowledge that it's very, very strong for that reason. Another reason that it's strong is that because in this society, in most of Western society and Eastern nowadays, like everywhere, sexuality has been repressed. And because sexuality is repressed, in some ways it's even stronger than how it naturally is. Okay, so there's either repression or there is there is sexuality which is out of control and not harmonized, not harmonious. So, for example, porn is a really good example of that. Okay, porn is not a problem by itself. Porn is a symptom of a problem. I don't watch porn, or I hardly ever watch porn, because I don't need to, because I don't need to compensate for something. Okay, people watch porn because they're trying to get an arousal, they're trying to get an experience, they think that they're learning, something, because sexuality is so, there's so much sexual problems and dysfunction and disinformation in society. Okay, and this is one of the reasons that is so strong. And I'm kind of like, we can get back to it in a moment. I wanna answer your question. How do we tame the lion? First of all, by acknowledging even the needs, the desires, the wants, the dreams, the imaginations, the fantasies, all of this stuff. Because if you're trying to tame something and you don't even see the animal, you cannot actually control it, you cannot tame it, you cannot do anything with it. It's gonna control you. It's stronger than you. Okay, everything which is in the dark is what you see, and the dark is also what you judge. Okay, so first of all, write down what you consider to be your most obscene or whatever fantasies, everything that you wanted. So first of all, write it down and look at that. And the second thing I would say, accept everything that you wrote. Accept everything that you wrote. Don't judge yourself for whatever, wants and desires or past experiences you might have had. Okay. And that's a step, or that's another step in loving yourself, connecting to yourself, loving yourself as who you are. Okay. And I'm not saying that you need to act on all of these desires and all of these fantasies. I'm saying, first of all, acknowledge that you have them. And the second thing, the next thing is looking at maybe those things represent something, symbolize something. So one of the most common desires that women are ashamed of is a desire to be raped or rape fantasy. And they say it's like, why do I have fantasies about somebody raping me? And psychology would say, and I would agree with that, is that a woman doesn't actually want to be raped. A woman yearns to meet a masculine which is strong and conscious and confident and knows what he's doing, and she wants to surrender to that masculine. So it comes out as, as a rape fantasy, but actually she doesn't want to be raped. She wants to be ravaged. She wants to surrender. She wants to relax. She wants to be receptive.
Her programming doesn't give her permission to enter fully into her sexuality, and a rape fantasy allows her to have what she wants without admitting that she does.
Beautiful. I've never heard it put in that way. So that's very, very true. Okay, so people have fantasies generally that represent whatever they repressed, whatever there was repressed in them. Okay, so this is something, and you would look at many fantasies and desires that people consider, bad and whatever, and you can always see the positive side of it. You can always see how that can actually be an empowering, a beautiful or harmonious experience if you play it in such a way which is harmonious and empowering and so on. So that's another thing that I would suggest. You can see how you can play out some of these fantasies either by yourself or with your partner, if your partner is open to explore some of those things, or sometimes even with a professional. Okay, the same way that you go to a psychologist or you go to a dentist or you go to whatever professional for professional needs. Some of those desires can be played out, and they're not necessarily sexual, by the way. Okay, sexual as in penetrative, sexual. So that's another thing that you can do. I would say start exploring your sexuality by yourself, or restart exploring your sexuality by yourself, because most people have explored their sexuality as babies and as young children, and then parents, family, society, whatever, put them down, control them, hit them, punish them, and so on. So get back into the innocent exploration of your own body and your own sexuality. And it can be sexual, it can be non-sexual. Touching your genitals is a really good example of that. So start touching yourself and make it okay, not just okay, make it beautiful for you to connect with your own body, both men and women. And then start explore giving yourself very, very deep sexual experiences by yourself, so you're not dependent on another person. So my book, Orgasm Unleashed, specifically for women, guides you into how to have all of these experiences by yourself. And we didn't even start talking about what's possible. A woman or a person can have dozens and sometimes hundreds and sometimes thousands of orgasms in the space of a few minutes or a few hours. Okay, a person can be in an orgasmic state for an hour, for 2 hours, constantly orgasming and moaning and shouting and so on. You can have pleasure in all of your body and all of your body at once, or places in your body which are not even considered sexual. You can have experiences of pleasure that, like, you literally feel like you're dying, but like you're loving it so much. You can have experience which are spiritual experiences, where maybe there's less like physical expressions, but you literally feel one with God, one with Goddess, one with spirit, one with humanity, one with the universe. Okay, so when I'm saying orgasm, I'm not meaning that 5-second contraction that most people have.
And I think what you're talking about, that flow of energy that flows, you can have a chakra in you can have an orgasm in all of the chakras, and that's actually a sign that the energy within you is flowing freely and not blocked.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And it's like there's so much, it's like sometimes I need to remind myself that for most people they have only experienced that 5-second ejaculation, orgasm with that contraction and everything that happens afterwards. Most women have only experienced, the clitoral orgasm with explosive orgasm, and afterwards, the clit becomes hypersensitive, and there's a feeling of like done, and some women would even say they're sad, depressed, angry after that, because it's not really a fulfilling experience, and there's no problem with the clit itself. The clit is a beautiful part of the body, and also ejaculation, there's no problem with that. But for me, I'm saying, let's know our body, let's know how to really play and dance and sing with our body, and then there's so much which is possible.
As I hear you talking, it sort of, I teach meditation, and the biggest objection that people have is that their life is so busy that they don't have the time to have a meditation practice. And everything that you're talking about here, exploring the body, it's giving yourself the time to do it, isn't it? And in the fast-paced life that most people have, that doesn't feel possible to them.
Yes. So much I can say about this. One of the core parts of my work is actually not just sexuality, but self-love. And self-love comes in so many: self-love, self-acceptance, self-worth, everything, all of this thing that starts with self. So I would ask this person, are you important enough to yourself? Do you value yourself enough to give yourself the time? Do you value yourself enough? Do you value your body enough, to connect to your body? Do you value your health? Do you value your energy? Do you value your spirituality?
Yeah.
Do you value your creativity? Okay, sexual energy is creative energy. So many people, if they get into these lives that are so busy, it's usually because they choose maybe on a subconscious level, they choose to be in that place, in that situation, in that work situation, in that life situation, okay? Because they're actually not allowing themselves, not giving themselves the freedom and the choice and the abilities and the experiences to have really what they want. Because on an unconscious level, they might believe that they are unworthy of having the life that they want, the love that they want, the pleasure that they want. They think it's a sin. They think it's wrong. Maybe, maybe not a religious sin, but just, it's wrong. I literally hear this from people. What you mean that I can actually have, what I want to have?
Mm-hmm.
So I would first of all suggest to these people, if you are touched by what you say, but what you're hearing, press pause and just literally take 1 minute without doing anything. Not even meditating, not even, being aware of your breath. 1 minute of not doing anything. And if your mind is busy, let your mind be busy. And if your body is hurting, let your body hurt. But just bring awareness to how you're feeling and what's happening in this moment.
But this is understandable because, as you said earlier, from the time you're a baby to a child, you're being programmed, and then you're being programmed by your peers. Then you're being programmed by relationships. Then you're being programmed by work and work environments. There's a constant programming, and the issue is that most people are so that are doing the programming or are so self-centered, like the largest portion of the population is so self-centered that they're pulling just as it has been done to them, you're pulling that self-esteem from them in essence, and they have to allow it to happen. But yet it touches I always find it amazing how people can't look at themselves in the mirror for more than a couple of seconds when they're brushing their teeth or combing their hair. But even then, they can't make eye contact. And when you have somebody try to do that, it's very, the staring contests are one thing, but staring at yourself, you're always losing the contest, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Yeah, to relate to what you're saying, I invite people to be self-centered. I suggest people to be self-centered, and it's self-centered in a way which is harmonious, which doesn't take away from others. Because
that's different. Yes.
We've been fed by a lot of the new age and spirituality, industries, and it's like that you always have to do everything for others, and it's always about service, and it's always about others. I would say take care of number one first, and then everybody else is taken care of. Okay, and I've done this, by myself. I've done it myself, that I was so focused on, helping others and saving the world and so on. And then I took a sabbatical last year, and I discovered that the world is still turning around the sun, without Eyal, cranking the handle. So I work with women who don't just have a career, but they take care of their husband, and they take care of the 3 kids, and they volunteer, and they do so many things. And I usually tell them, can you drop some of your responsibilities? Can you be a better mom by spending less time with your kids, but more quality time with your kids? Okay, so I would with being self-centered, usually I would first say, like, see what you're doing in your life and see what you're actually doing because you're obliged to. Okay, because you feel, because your mama, like, did this, and your grandmother did this, and you feel that you have to do this. Okay, so really, by all means, be self-centered. And then, become a bodhisattva, because a bodhisattva is very self-centered on their spiritual practice, and then they can go and serve.
Yeah, I think I have a small issue with the verbiage here, because to me, it's being self-aware, self-loving, self-caring, as opposed to being self-centered. I guess if you look at yourself as core, I can understand being self-centered, but not selfish in that sense of the word. You can.
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a very fine line.
Yeah.
I had a very good teacher when it comes to hypocrisy on that, which was my mother. My mother, if you went to her house, she would literally give you the shirt off of her back. But as soon as you left, she would say, "Look at that person! They took the shirt right off my back." Like it's living in that atmosphere for her. You could see when I look back at her and I look back at my father and my family, I see the pain that was in that family relationship, and the pain and the biggest pain that was there is no one, including myself, my brother, my sister, anybody in that family, could not say what they truly were feeling.
Yeah.
Without being. I remember coming home once after 16 years old, coming home after an agape session with a church. And I came my brother was there, my sister, my mother and father. And I walked up to my family and I looked at them and I said, "I love you." And I mean, I was feeling this intense love for my family. And what my brother said, "Come on, sit down." And he's 13 years older than I am. So he was in his 30s almost. He was been in his 30s. He said, "Sit down, have a drink, have a beer. Come on, sit down, relax." Like thinking that there was something wrong with me. But I realized afterwards there was nothing. That wasn't the issue. He was worried that he might have to come out and say the same thing, or search his own emotional body to being expected to come out with the same thing. And even to the day my parents passed away, and that extroverted or open love wasn't there. It was very interesting situation.
Yeah. And it's, brings us back to, what is masculinity and what is femininity and what's the mature one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, yeah.
So, well, we're going to take a break, but we're going to continue going deeper and deeper into this subject after we come back. And you're listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey and with Eyal. And we're talking about sacred sexuality today. Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey, and with our guest this evening, who is Eyal. And he is Eyal from Intimate Power, and he's a Tantric life coach. And we've been having actually a very grounding conversation. I find your energy very grounding, Eyal, and I think it's because you're so in touch with the physical body. That energy is sort of filtering into the whole conversation, and it feels very good. So one of the things we were talking about in our earlier conversation, and I think about this sometimes, and it's about the young people that are growing up today and what their exposure to sexuality is. So you were talking about porn, and you would, and it's so
rampant.
It's so accessible, and it's accessible to young children, and I imagine that that's where a lot of them are now learning about sex and sexuality. And I just wonder what programming how they end up being as a result. And I would like you to comment on that. if you don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's I'm not an expert, on child development or child sexuality or all of this, but what I can say, because I have been having these discussions both on, interviews and also with colleagues and with parents. The statistics are that in the past few years, the average age that a young person gets exposed to porn is 11.
That's very young, I think.
11 means that some, because it's the average, means that some get exposed at eight or 9 even.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's, both men and women. And it's same thing with adult, porn. It's not that, men are the sole, clients, sole users of porn. Yeah. Where do we start? I would first start with the parents. I would first start with the parents, because many parents are worried about their children's porn usage or whatever. But I would say it's like, how are you giving an example to your kids? Not by what you're saying, but by who you are. Because specifically children, also adult people, but specifically children are very attuned not just to what you're saying, but also to what you're doing. So first of all, if you want to raise sexually healthy, sexually empowered, sexually aware children, you have to, at least strive to do this for yourself first. And then, there's a lot that you can do about this before you even, think about having children. Or if you already have, children, there's a lot that you can do. Now it's like with business, the best time to start a business or to get into Bitcoin or whatever, was 5 years ago, but the second best time is today. And the same thing with everything, it's like some people get very sad that they lost, their life. You haven't lost your life. Everything was happening exactly according to plan. So if you're listening right now and you're 57 and you already, have 2 adult kids, do whatever you can right now with yourself. So yeah, sexual education, sexual empowerment for the parents. And the second thing is that with your kids, you need to have the conversation before puberty, because sexuality is not just something that starts when somebody starts, developing external signs, in puberty. But as I mentioned, kids are sexual. Some kids are sexual in the womb. There's ultrasound, videos of fetuses masturbating in the womb.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and most people who've been around, small babies and children see that they are touching themselves a lot, and that is natural. Okay, so first of all, you need to learn how to acknowledge that. For sure not to cringe from that, because so many people have sexual issues because their parents either directly punish them or shouted at them and so on, or indirectly have, and I remember a friend of the family, when she was young and she was touching herself, and there was like the feeling in the room of kind of like, oh, like what is this little girl is doing, So one of my slightly hippie friends shared with me that her boy came to her, one day with an erection, and she said, "Mommy, look," and she said, "Wow, it's so beautiful. You have such a beautiful penis. Just make sure you don't do this, in the garden, like in the kindergarten or in school or whatever." Okay, so it's really like acknowledging that, celebrating that, and also teaching them what are the healthy boundaries, are what are the healthy rules around showing yourself, around interacting with other people. I kind of like talked more about the positive. The negative, I don't even need to talk about the negative, because the negative is all around you. And it's not just now, by the way, with kids growing up this moment. It's been like this for, I would say, forever, for hundreds, maybe for thousands of years. We can't look back at a time where like society was sexually empowered or whatever. There's been a few cultures, like the Indian culture, way before the British, before the Muslims, before all of the colonialism arrived, and they were relatively more sexually empowered. Okay, but Western society, never been.
No, it's amazing, isn't it? Really.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And it made me think of another question.
Me too.
Oh, do you want to ask yours first?
Just a quick one. We're touching on pornography and pornography. Yeah, I think it's more accessible these days. And the one thing about pornography that I find very interesting, or I'm not sure if interesting is the correct word, but the new trend to what do you call it? The non-real pornography, like the cartoon.
All, all pornography is not real, Corey. Everything, nothing is real there. It's like
I understand that.
Yeah.
Again, semantics here, but no, just what the attraction is, or what the purpose of this cartoon pornography is. If it's to, I look at it and thinking it's to stimulate the kids at an earlier age, because it's like a game. They're making a game of it now, as opposed to a realism in any way, shape, or form. And yes, all pornography is not real. I understand that.
Yeah, and I would add something there, which is, I wanted to mention it earlier. If you want to, I have an article called "Is Society Sexually Repressed?" Okay, and one of the things that I say, porn is as I mentioned, not just a problem, but a symptom of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there is so much sexual dysfunction, so many men with premature ejaculation, and by the way, if they don't have premature ejaculation, the average time for men from penetration to ejaculation is 5.4 minutes, which I consider, premature ejaculation. Okay, premature ejaculation, by the way, is coming before both you and your partner choose to. That's premature ejaculation. You look at women, and women who their whole life don't have an orgasm, or they just have these shallow, depleting kind of orgasms. You look at relationship breakdown, you look at infidelity, and one of the biggest reasons for infidelity is actually sexual dysfunction, for both men and women. You look at what's going on in the world, and this is the symptom. Sorry to be kind of like I'm sound like the prophet of doom, but it's like this is the world that we live in. This is what's happening. The problem isn't coming. The problem is here already, and it's been here for a very long time. So this work that I'm doing is really about bringing awareness both to sexuality and also to spirituality, or mindfulness. It's a really good word for that. And seeing how from this moment with ourselves, we can make ourselves more relaxed around sexuality, more knowledgeable about sexuality, more experienced, more relaxed, more free. And from that, a lot of things can change in your own life. So maybe we cannot change, the rules and the laws and everywhere. Maybe like some Muslim countries will continue cutting off the genitals of young kids, and other religions would keep cutting off the genitals of young, both men, boys and girls. But at least we in our own life, we can make a difference.
So here's my other question, which probably might be the last one we have time for. And I wonder if it's one you ever get asked. I want to ask about, because we talked about sex and kids, I want to talk about sex and the human life cycle, and the other end of the spectrum, actually, and sex and aging. And, because, we have all this imagery in our media. It's all young, nubile people and whatever. But so what about, because, at least in the West, it's the baby boomer population, it's the predominant portion of the population are older people now. And, I think people get into different physical issues as they get older, both with their bodies function, but also just sexually functioning. And I wonder what wisdom you can bring to bear on that topic of sex and aging.
Beautiful question, and you're right. I don't get asked that very often. So I do have, I do worked with women who were menopausal, postmenopausal, and both as clients, coaching clients, people in workshops, um, both women and men. So definitely. So one of the things, menopause is a time. It's a little bit like the second teenagehood. Like all of the hormones are changing and everything, and women need to adapt. And I would say that having a healthy sexuality is one of the things that got women through menopause easier than other women. Okay, so I've worked with women that definitely said that since they started their sexual practices, mind you, their self-sexual practices, it was easier for them, like the hormones basically stabilized, and it was easier for them to deal with, hot flushes and so on. They become, yes?
Sorry, I was going to say, what do you, do you think that the sex drive has to diminish with age?
Oh, definitely not.
Okay, because that's something that happens with a lot of people, I think.
Some of it happens, and some of it is a psychological belief that it happens. Okay, so again, for both men and women, I'm 40 something, and my sexual energy is, still, with all the practice I do, still a little bit less than it was when I was 20, but, I've, both for myself and again, for people who are older than me that I know, that I've worked with, that I heard from, is that you can actually have a very, very strong libido and very beautiful sex, so in your 60s and your 70s and even beyond that. So doing the sexual practices and starting as early as possible obviously is great. So you're not losing your sexual energies, but you keep cultivating, you keep circulating, keep sharing your sexual energies. And then I was just about to mention, vaginal dryness is a problem for people who are menopausal, but actually doing these practices gets women vaginally lubricated. It takes care of, on even at the physical level, it takes care of the tissues and so on. And between partners, you really learn how to, by doing these practices, you learn how to be in tune with each other. So yes, maybe you need a little bit longer to get aroused, but afterwards you can. I'll give an example. It's like it's much better to bring this home. I was working with a Dutch woman who was a healer. And she was walking a lot and helping a lot of people, but she was very busy and she didn't have much of a sex life. She was saying down there as an example. Okay, she couldn't say like my vagina or whatever. So I worked with her for a while, and after a while, she became so orgasmic that she couldn't sleep at night in a good way. She was telling me, I'm lying in bed, I'm basically shaking and vibrating and moaning with hardly doing anything, or sometimes without doing anything. And afterwards, she started dating. I also, I work with sexuality, creativity, and business. So I helped her, double her rates and, do more creative stuff, so then she had more time. She started dating and then she started having sex. She started having relationships, after years of hardly having anything. Okay. And this is one person in Holland. There was, another woman in Hawaii that was having, similar experiences. So definitely sex does not end at any age. Okay. And by doing these practices, literally people said that, they've been alive for 60 years and they've never had such good sex.
And I read about female tantric masters who could control whether they had a menstrual cycle or not, so they could switch their menstrual cycle on or off at will. Anyway, I guess we'll have to save that for another time, because
I would say something like,
okay, sure.
even it's like controlling ovulation is possible, but it's quite difficult. You have to do hours of practices.
Yeah.
But actually, a woman can decrease her menstrual cycle, so her bleeding. Okay, so still bleed. Menstruation is beautiful. It's sacred. There's no problem with that. But menstruate, but have less side effects, less pains, and actually that keeps you more in touch with your energy, not less. Okay, so just throwing out that it's possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Eyal. It's been a very enlightening show. We've enjoyed having you on the show, and I'm sure that lots of our listeners will want to look you up. So how can they do that? How should they find you?
So first of all, you're welcome, and I enjoyed very much being here. And really, you guys asked me stuff that I wasn't asked before, so that's really great. Yeah, so the main place is intimatepower.com. Intimate like intimacy, intimatepower.com. You can find my book Orgasm Unleashed. You can find, ejaculation control program for men. You can find Awakening Female Pleasure to teach men how to touch women. So there's a lot of free stuff. There's a lot of resources on my website. That's the main place that I would invite people to go. And really, wherever you are, whatever you do, if you only have 5 minutes a day, you can find there ideas and practices to share. If you're single, if you're in a partnership, if you are bisexual, whatever your gender is, there is stuff, there's a lot of stuff there. And reach out to me and tell me, what you got. I'd love to hear, for people listening to this, what you got from this conversation, or what's, if you read or consumed some of my content, how that helped you in life. I would love to hear that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, for your very grounded and human presence. So listeners, this was Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey, and our guest Eyal, and we're going to be back in a week from now, next Tuesday, from 7 to 8 Pacific time on 101.7 FM.
See you then, folks. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. You can also find the questions that were asked during this show at the website on our free card reading podcast page, where you'll find a full list of them. Come back again.